A very special good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Morning Briefing. I'm Jeff DeForest, along with one Mike Lubitz, and we're in a little bit, I don't know that we're in disagreement here, but yesterday's activity in the National Football League, let's face it, if you were a football fan, very exciting, a lot of players changing teams, some teams seemingly decimated by the defections due to free agency, one of which is right here in our hometown of South Florida, which that would be the Miami Dolphins. And we've often questioned what the hell is going on in the front office with the Miami Dolphins. But for a rare change, even with all of the losses that they incurred and suffered yesterday due to people just waving big amounts of money in front of players that you thought to be not necessarily average, above average, but not necessarily headed for the Hall of Fame. But they're making Hall of Fame type of money, and that's the way it goes. First day of free agency in the National Football League. My head was spinning like Linda Blair in The Exorcist, literally. just spinning around. I don't know if that's too old of a reference. Does anybody remember Linda Blair? Remember when she threw up the pea soup? That's kind of how a lot of fans felt around town yesterday. Miami fans are face down in the gutter today, in total despair, wondering how the hell are we going to fill the roster? They did lose 4 players to free agency. They cut a couple of significant players prior to that to try and get in compliance with the salary cap, restructured a few deals. But this was not uncommon. This was happening all over the league. And one of the big, obviously the biggest contract and the biggest story, which is weird because I don't know that anybody has played the system better than Kirk Cousins in the years that he's been in the National Football League.
He's never been a top 10 quarterback ever, and he's going to make as much money as any quarterback ever.
Forget about John fucking Elway. I mean, or any of the greats. Kirk Cousins is a guy that has mastered the ability to play the franchise tag off of free agency and find himself constantly in a position where he is just getting mega million-dollar deals one after another for one season at a time. This time he signs a multi-year deal. Kirk Cousins, 4 years, $180 million. If you could have Patrick Mahomes for $50 million or Kirk Cousins for $45 million a year, what do you think you're better off?
Isn't that crazy? That's so crazy. And that's the problem with the people that are hating on Tua. It's like, I mean, he's as good as Kirk Cousins.
That was a question I was going to ask you. Now, if you were a Miami Dolphins fan, would you rather have Kirk Cousins for this next year or Tua Tagovailoa? Who would you rather have throwing the rock for you?
I'd rather have Tua. And he's younger, like a lot younger.
At the same price now, though. That's the interesting thing. They're going to have to dole out about $45 million a year for Tua, who is okay. I don't know. Is he a great quarterback? I don't think so. I don't know that he's ever going to be great. He's very serviceable. He's good, and there are spots where he looks like he really can play the game, and that you wouldn't want anybody else back there other than Tua Tagovailoa. I don't know if that's true. That's a little bit of a stretch. But is he great? I don't know. Is Kirk Cousins great? He was having a really good season last year for Minnesota. That was lost in the fact that Minnesota didn't end up doing anything because Cousins' injury left them in a quarterback quagmire, and they were struggling to put pieces together after that. But prior to that, Cousins was having, I think, what most people thought was far and away his best year, which is saying a lot because it's not like he's been incompetent, Kirk Cousins. But for some reason, everybody loves saying his name. I mean, if you turn on any radio station around the country, somebody's talking about, can you believe this, Kirk Cousins? And he sets, I don't know that he didn't break any records with this contract, but certainly it was an eye-opener to see him going to the Atlanta Falcons, who also got Austin Eckler, who is an outstanding running back and a touchdown machine. So did the Falcons take a quantum leap forward with these 2 acquisitions, Lubie? They're also in a situation with a new head coach. A lot of people thought maybe, was there any speculation that Cousins was going to the Commanders in free agency?
I don't know if he's going back. I don't know if he's going back there.
Imagine? Yeah. I don't think he was, inclined to do that. But nonetheless, a lot of changes. I mean, if you look at this list, a zillion players changing teams yesterday in free agency.
I
And
like
it just got started.
going to the Eagles. That's always fun when they're like, I'm going to go to the team you hate. That's always great.
Well, it was interesting, too, because there's conversation now about how the purse strings have opened up a little bit for the running back position. You also saw Josh Jacobs sign.
Yeah.
But that being said, it wasn't like they got, some huge bump from what they were getting under the franchise tag that they were screaming about just last year. Franchise tag for running backs last year paid out a little bit over $10 million. these guys that essentially, lined up. It's some form of a strike, is it not? When you don't sign with your current team and you say, I'm going to go test free agent waters, they all averaged about 12 million a year. So, well, it wasn't a huge increase at the running back position. I don't know why that position. I understand why it's not regarded in the same category as some others, but when you see some slug offensive lineman making $20 million a year, you're wondering why a running back who's taking an enormous amount of punishment by comparison to the diva wide receivers who are making 25 million a year. The franchise tag for a wide receiver, I believe, is 21 million, Lubie, something like that.
Like receiver, it's almost quarterback money.
Yeah, it's pretty significant. So you can see why running backs feel like they're getting jilted here in the National Football League, but there's not much they can do about it because the best ability you can have is availability, and they are the ones that tend to get crushed. Yes. Under the heat of battle and the wear and tear that taking the ball 30 times and running it into a brick wall might end up forcing you to, unfortunately, make many visits to the injured list. But interesting day all the way around. I don't know. Do you see anything earth-shattering? The news here in South Florida certainly didn't come with any great joyful sentiment along with it. And you're wondering, what the hell does Chris Greer do now, the general manager of the Dolphins? We were wondering what he did for years. And then finally, they made a bunch of moves. I don't even know if they were of his volition, if they were his ideas, Chris Greer. Do you think he was just sitting there kind of and everybody else was telling him, okay, don't worry about it. We got Jalen Ramsey. We got this guy. We got that guy. But if he was a part of it, I don't know how he approaches this, Mike Lubie. So what do you think? You're actually very strange that you would give a general manager a free pass.
Well, my thing is, and someone said this, and I don't know if it was a media person or whatever, but they said, look at the teams that didn't make moves. And they named the Ravens and the Chiefs. And like they named the Bills. They named a bunch of teams that have won a lot recently. And I'm like, that's weird. It's almost like running to sign someone on the opening of free agency is a desperation move average to bad teams make to try and be relevant. I don't want the Dolphins to be that. So it was like, you know what? You're still going to get talent throughout free agency. If you wait, it seems to settle and you can guys at better prices. Look, I like Christian Wilkins. Christian Wilkins had a Pro Bowl level season. Christian Wilkins was one of the centerpieces of the Dolphins defense. What people have wrong is he's not the centerpiece of the Dolphins defense. Yeah. And he's not a top 5 defensive tackle, let alone he's getting the same money, if not, I think he's getting more than Chris Jones. Chris Jones is arguably right now the best defensive tackle in football. Aaron Donald is possibly the best defensive player still, but he's older. He is really good still, but maybe he's not as good. Chris Jones is taking that step to be right there in the same breath as an Aaron Donald. He's making less than Christian Wilkins. Okay, you can't pay a guy that's not really even top 10 at his position number 1 money. You can if you're the Raiders.
Yes.
And what happens to the Raiders every year? So that's my thing. The Dolphins.
They are fueled by self-sabotage. You know that.
Like if you look at the and again, it went under the radar because you saw Robert Hunt, a guard who missed most of last year, get $100 million. It's like, okay, go Carolina Panthers, another desperate organization. Go pay a guard $100 million. The Dolphins went and signed a center, which they needed for bargain basement price, a guy that was on one of the better offensive lines in football for the last few years out of Tennessee. They went and got a linebacker. Again, they lost Jerome Baker. Everyone was crying. Well, Jerome Baker was making a crap ton of money, and he was hurt all the time. They went and got a linebacker from Cleveland, one of the better defenses in football the last few years, at a much lesser number than Jerome Baker. So what Greer's doing, which is hard for me to say because I can't stand him, is he's letting the big money go away and bringing in people of the same, if not better talent for less money. Connor Williams was going to cost him a lot more than $7 million a year than this guy from the Tennessee got them. Like, look, you can get a defensive tackle in the draft that can do similar things than Wilkins because you have your big money into your edge guys. Phillips is going to come due. Bradley Chubb cost him an arm and a leg. You just paid Sealer a ton of money. Like you can't pay everyone. And your sacks are really supposed to come from your edge guys. You just need your middle guy to clog up the lane in the run, right? So why can't they find that in the first or second round? So to me, people were jumping off of buildings. This isn't the same. Like they have their tentpole guys. They have a stud corner. They have a stud safety. They have stud edge guys, multiple. They have 2 stud receivers. They have one of the best running back stables in all of the NFL, right? They have their franchise quarterback supposedly. you don't overpay for a lineman. Like you have to do is
I don't know
fill
that
those
Robert Hunt was going to make anybody forget about any previous Hall of Famers that played here. Seemed like an above-average lineman, but on
spots.
the so-called makeshift patchwork offensive line that the Dolphins have featured since they had Zonka running the rock for him, and I had Bob Kuchenberg out front leading the pack on the offensive front. They've been staggering in this category forever. So to lose a guy who was even halfway decent or considered that way is obviously a setback for him. But I don't know that Robert Hunt, him and of himself, was that devastating of a loss that the franchise won't be able to overcome it. We'll see what happens. A lot of changes all around the National Football League. It's interesting how it stole the spotlight. I still get a big thrill out of the Weenie Conference tournaments that punch tickets to the NCAA tournament. You had a couple of championships won yesterday. James Madison is going to be back in the NCAA tournament. I believe that's their first appearance since 2013.
Oh, wow.
Of course, fabled Final Four appearance many, many years ago. And that, is something they're unlikely to achieve again. But 31 wins for James Madison this year. Had the most wins in Division One. This coach might be one to watch.
Yeah,
Mark Byington might be a coach to watch there. He wins a couple of games in the NCAA tournament and bangs them to the moon, Alice. All of a sudden, he's a candidate for virtually every big-time job that's out there. That was in the Sun Belt Conference. And in the SoCon Conference, you had Samford. I thought that was a dog track somewhere in the Tampa area, wasn't it? Or Jacksonville?
Samford in Alabama? Because I think
Samford's in Alabama, yeah.
Because we have a Samford too in Florida, but I don't think it has a university.
No, like I said, I thought it was. I'm thinking, wow, the dog track had a basketball team that somehow qualified under NCAA parameters to go to the tournament. I was surprised by that because I'm figuring, of course, the dog track is defunct, but Samford hadn't been to the tournament since 2000. And now punches a bid there. Well, always exciting to see this, though, Lubie. I mean, don't you get a kick out of it? It really is the grassroots level that college sports is supposed to go ahead and feature and make you want to embrace and wrap your arms around. Where these guys that they're not getting huge NIL money, I would imagine. If you're playing for James Madison, are they paying big money out to a couple of their stars?
Oh, no.
I would think not.
That's why people still love the tournament because. This amateur bullshit we know is amateur when it comes to we know when it comes to college football, it's not amateur. And basketball, when it gets down to the nitty gritty, we know it's not amateur. But the tournament puts random ass schools that we know NIL is not a factor. Almost look on the same level. St. Peter's, FAU, like they were right there last year.
Fairleigh Dickinson last year.
Fairleigh Dickinson were right there with Duke and Carolina. Like it puts everyone on a playing field that makes you feel like days gone by.
You love seeing that Frankenstein-like zombie, Zach Edey, being beaten by some 5'6" guard that was a walk-on at Fairleigh Dickinson. I mean, it makes it fascinating for sure. So it's always exciting, and you see the exuberance. You see what it means. I mean, schools that haven't made it in 20 years, it's not like it's routine. You lose in the opening round of the ACC tournament, you're still going to the big dance. That is not in play in these conference tournaments where they're likely only going to get one ticket to the NCAA tournament. So it's win and you're in, lose and you're going home. And so much is on the line there. Very exciting to see the conclusion of a lot of these games and what it means to the players that are on these teams to make it to the NCAA tournament when it isn't something that is a matter of routine. So I get a big kick out of it. And then you're trying to size up where the upsets are going to be in the first round of the tournament. I don't know that I've seen that yet, the significance of what any of these weenie conference teams are capable of doing, but definitely is worth taking a look at before you plunge into the office pool and allow the cleaning lady to walk away with the money once again. It's true. I mean, it's always in South Florida. It's usually a woman of Hispanic descent, hasn't watched a college basketball game in her life, has no idea what she's doing. Some salesperson threw her entry in there and threw the $10 in or whatever, the 20 into the pool. And the next thing you know, everybody's happy because she's walking away with $300-400 of the management's money. That was always great. Sports guys routinely bomb out in the NCAA pool, so we'll see. And we may have to get into some kind of bracketology here on the show. All right, many other things happening. Edwin Diaz, you Met fans celebrating. He came on after being out for the entire year last year. That stupid celebration dance that he was doing at the World Baseball Classic, a meaningless way to lose a player. He's jumping up and down, tears a patellar tendon. And now comes back, strikes out 3 guys in his first appearance back. He's on the scene. Holy Josh Hader, what are we talking about here? The Mets Pencil him in there for a world championship. Diaz is back. 3 strikeouts in spring training. That was good. Many other things happening. Tournament Players Championship in golf. We'll get into that a little bit later on in a week. And always a pleasure being with you. But a whirlwind day. And I thought that Lubie, I didn't even know if you would make it on the show today, Lubie. I thought you would be devastated by the defections via free agency. The Miami Dolphins losing 4 key guys yesterday to other teams, offering big, just whopper-sized bankrolls to players that may be of modest ability by comparison to the superstar salaries they're commanding. All right, we're going to get out of here. Thanks so much for being with us. For Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. That's today's edition of the Morning Briefing right here on Caffeine TV and NoFilter.net.